Lorraine Whitmore was 71 years old the day she closed the door to her past. The door wasn't metaphorical. It was the weather-worn, blue-painted entrance to the house she'd lived in for nearly 4 decades. House filled with echoes. It stood at the edge of a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York, where the trees were just starting to shed their golden October leaves. The house had once been full of life. The laughter of children, the clinking of dinner plates, the rustle of newspaper pages her husband used to read aloud from. But now it felt like a museum of a life once lived. She had been alone since Charles passed away 10 years ago. Cancer had taken him too swiftly, too unfairly, as cancer always does. The first few years after his death were a blur of casseroles from neighbors, sympathy cards, and an overwhelming silence she didn't know how to fill. Her children had lives of their own, grown and scattered across states, visiting when they could but not often enough to make the emptiness disappear. Lorraine tried. She joined a gardening club, she volunteered at the library, she even adopted a cat. But nothing quite stuck. Nothing filled the silence in a way that felt real. It wasn't that she was depressed, though she had been, it was that she was paused. Like her life had gone on hold the moment Charles took his last breath, and everything afterward was just waiting. And then something peculiar happened. It started with a box she found in the attic. She hadn't been up there in years. A squirrel had chewed through part of the eaves, and she climbed up to inspect the damage, flashlight in hand. That's when she saw it. A cardboard box sealed with yellowed packing tape. Written on top in Charles's blocky handwriting were the words, "Lorraine. Open when you're ready." She sat with that box for 3 days before she opened it. She put it on the kitchen table, made herself a cup of chamomile tea, and stared at it as though it might speak on its own. Inside were things she had forgotten. A sketchbook of hers from college, before she dropped out to marry Charles. A bundle of postcards they'd never sent from a road trip they never took. And a letter. It was dated 2 months before his diagnosis. "My dearest Lorraine, I don't know when or if you'll open this. Maybe you never will, and that's okay. But if you're reading it now, it means you've outlived me, and I can't say how sorry I am for that. You've always given to others. You gave up your painting, your dreams, your youth, to raise a family with me. And while I'd never undo any of our years together, I hope that someday you'll remember who you were before you became mine. You have more chapters left. Promise me you'll write them. Not for me. For you." She wept, of course. But the next morning she bought a canvas. She hadn't painted in nearly 50 years. Her hands were stiff with age, her eyesight not what it used to be, but she felt a stirring, a small, insistent pulse of life. The attic box became her catalyst. Over the next year, she repainted the guest room into a studio. She began visiting a nearby nature reserve with a sketchpad. She found an online community of older women artists. And slowly the colors came back, not just in her art but in her soul. Her children were surprised when she announced she was selling the house. "You love that place," they said. "No," she replied softly. "I loved the memories. But I'm ready to make new ones." She moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near an arts co-op in a nearby town. Smaller, simpler, quieter, but perfect. She walked to the farmer's market on Saturdays, attended figure drawing classes on Wednesdays, and even held her first solo exhibition last spring. Sometimes she still missed Charles so much it ached. But she understood now that loving him didn't mean she had to keep living in the shadow of who she was with him. She could love him and still reclaim herself. On the day she left her house, she stood on the porch, breathed in the crisp autumn air, and gently closed the door. She didn't look back. She didn't need to.